I'm Alex and I'm an alcoholic. Yes. Yeah, it doesn't really take a whole lot here to be properly vetted. It's like, you know. Let's see. So my sobriety date is July 17th, 2011. My home group is a gratitude study group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Raleigh. We meet on Mondays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. downtown. If you're ever around, we'd love to have you. And I do have a sponsor, and I have the privilege of sponsoring other women. It's also always a privilege to be asked to speak. It's not something I think I'm like particularly good at. I don't enjoy doing it, but I'm always happy to do it. I'm like already impressed with this group. This board is like really serious. I can tell you guys are like really involved in this community, and that's really cool. I appreciate the organization around that. I can tell you are really trying to reach the next sick and suffering alcoholic. I always just like to start with a summary in case like I go completely off the rails. So I'll tell you that the person I brought to you I was 24. I was technically homeless. I was broke, completely suicidal. I couldn't imagine life with or without a drink, involved in a lot of illegal activity. Like, you name it, like, that's what I brought here. And this really was, like, the last house on the left for me. And I didn't particularly have, like, a lot of hope that it would work. And standing here now, you know, I'm a productive member of society, a participating member in the family that I had frayed relationships with, friends, you know, wife, mom. Like, there's a part in the spiritual experience that talks about being able to change your outlook on life in a way that you could never do through years of self-discipline. And that's the experience that I had. You know, the life that I have today is absolutely nothing that I could have ever achieved on my own, and couldn't have even dreamed of. When I got here, the only thing I really thought might happen is maybe I could stop drinking. I wouldn't ever be happy about it, but maybe I could stop drinking, you know, long enough. And that was pretty much like my hopes when I got here, and those were minimal at best. So, you know, suffice it to say, Alcoholics Anonymous is the best thing that ever happened to me, hands down. And I owe everything in my life to rooms like this and people like you. So that's why I'm grateful to be here. So I was born and raised in Raleigh. You know, by all standards, I have like the best family that anyone could ask for. You know, my parents are still together. We were very lucky. It was a stable home, you know, like all the things that someone could want, I think. And I was genuinely like dissatisfied with life as long as I can remember it. I just was unimpressed. And, you know, I heard a speaker once say, like, I could have used a sponsor in kindergarten, and that's how I feel. Like, I just didn't understand what was going on really ever. And, you know, the things that I hate saying because they sound cliche, but that's because they're true for the vast majority of people who stand up here, is like, I didn't feel like I fit in. I was terrified of people. I was very fearful. And those feelings instilled in me from a very young age that there was something wrong with me, you know. And when I got here, I was like, there is something wrong with me. And you guys had to convince me it was alcoholism. But that took a long time, you know. I just didn't know what was wrong with me. So I think, you know, I made it as long as I could to 12 years old before I took a drink. I think I couldn't have made it, you know, if I had never had a drink, I wouldn't have made it to 18. Like, I just can't imagine. It was the thing that saved my life first. And I was always interested in alcohol. I did not grow up in an alcoholic home, but I grew up around a lot of people who drank socially. And, like, I would drink non-alcoholic beers, like, as, like, a 10-year-old. Like, that's probably not normal, right? I had, like, an infatuation with alcohol. I don't know. It's probably not normal. And I don't really, my memory is very spotty, so some of this is, like, my best guess. I know this is, like, recorded, and someone's going to be like, that didn't happen. But it's trying to be as honest as I can. I think my first drink was when I was about 12. My mom sent me and my brother and our friends to the beach with my older brother for the weekend, and he spent all the money that she gave him for food on alcohol, and he was like, good luck, you know. He was like in college, and, you know, we were like in middle school. And, you know, nothing really like crazy happened, right? Like I just kind of like felt like, yeah, I'm like cool, I'm an adult, you know, like whatever. And I really just don't remember a lot of that time. Like I know we would like raid liquor cabinets and like fill up vodka bottles with water, you know, like the normal stuff. But when I started to go into high school was when like I had that like profound experience of feeling like I found the solution, you know, that like when I drank, I felt like I fit in my skin and I could talk to other people. And like, you know, the other girls in school would like do cheerleading or play soccer. Like that was their thing. Like I immediately was like, drinking is my thing, you know, like I'll put up with whatever I have to in life as long as I can drink whenever possible. And that was like a very conscious thought at, you know, 14 years old. And I mean, high school's like, when you're in high school, like you have no responsibilities. Like it was fun, you know. I hung out with people who wanted to party, and our lives like revolved around like what we were going to do every weekend. And it wasn't abnormal with the group of people that I hung out with, and I had relatively few consequences from that. You know, high school and college, like I said, I had no responsibilities. I had friends. We traveled. We went to concerts. Like, we had fun. But, you know, I would wake up every morning and, like, I hated myself. And I figured, like, that means that y'all hate me too. So, like, I gotta hate you back. And, like, it was very, like, you know, dark in my own brain. But, like, a drink fixes that, right? And, like, I just kept pursuing having fun, you know, and the more I pursued that stuff, the worse it got. You know, the day I got my license, I started driving drunk. I had no regard for the safety of others, and I drove in blackouts pretty much every single day until I got here. And I knew that was like not an okay thing to do. But to me, like me being able to like go to a better party or go to the store was like more important than the safety of my community. And I was a blackout drinker, always was, and people never, like I remember people would be like, well, what do you mean you don't remember? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do I mean? Like it just didn't make sense to me that other people didn't like black out. I just never knew another way. I still don't, can't imagine it really. And like, yeah, that's like scary, but like it never really scared me. I thought either you get really drunk or you don't. And so by the time I graduated high school, I was an everyday drinker. I remember around that time, like, you know, people would be like, why do your hands shake like that? And I would just be like, oh, I'm just like really hungover. And that is true, but I mean, it wasn't until I started reading the big book that I was like, oh, that's like the shakes, not like, oh, I feel bad. It just like didn't occur to me at that time. And so I went to college, not based on like academic interests. I went to school where I knew a lot of people because I don't like making new friends because I'm terrified of a few. And where I knew people kind of did things the way that I did. I mean, it's a good school. I'm not talking down about it, but I'm just saying that's like the kind of like thought process I had. I got a drinking ticket before like school even started, obviously. And, you know, when kids were like going to football games and going to their first like frat parties, like I was like alone in a house that I could reach the refrigerator from the couch and like throwing things at the wall and like listening to jazz and watching documentaries. Like it just wasn't like a fun like college experience, you know what I mean? Like I had kind of like passed the like fun drinking, partying or whatever. And you know, that's when things started to get like a little bit darker. But you know, it was still fun sometimes, right? So like I had two speeds. It was either like alone drinking in a dark house or, you know, I'm out falling off of a bar stool, like, you know, other college kids. And I was really good at going to school and like making things look presentable, because in my mind, if I'm doing like life things, then no one can say anything about my drinking. Like, that's the rule. You can't say anything if I'm doing everything else pretty well. And so really only people who were really close to me kind of could see it for what it was worth, and I think other people just saw like a college student. But the people who were close to me did start to notice things, more just about my general like behavior being erratic. But eventually they started noticing my drinking too. Like, why do you have to just like pound beers when we're literally like watching TV on a Tuesday night? And I would just look at them and think like, how are you not? Like, it just didn't make sense to me how people could just like sit on the couch and watch TV and just be like relaxed. Because like, I would call myself an alcoholic because like, I'm like, I need to drink. Like, I thought that was an excuse. Like, it was like a certificate. And I just didn't understand how other people could like live in the world without drinking the way that I drank. And so in a lot of ways I was really okay with that. But what ended up happening was by the time I was about to graduate from college, I realized that my lifestyle was abnormal, and I wasn't going to be able to exist in like the real world, behaving the way that I was behaving. And so drinking one night alone and crying, as I'm wont to do, I sent my mom this email, and I told her like in detail about like what my life looked like, which is like, those like glimpses of like a cry for help, and then you're immediately like, no, I was just kidding. I told her things that like a lot of moms like wouldn't want to hear, that are like very scary. And she immediately was like, okay, we're going to get you some help. And I was like, no, I'm good. But I ended up going to like my first outpatient and my first AA meeting. I don't remember much about the meeting. I wasn't like physically drunk. I went like sober. I just don't remember much about it. But it's like a small mountain town. How I recall it is there was a lot of old people, and the only people like my age were in drug court, and they were like on the back row, like asleep. And like I knew some of them, so I was like, okay, I know what this is like. The only thing I remember is them talking about God. And I was like, thanks for the information, I'll see you later. I just like didn't understand what this had to do with like the insanity that was happening in my brain. Because again, like not drinking wasn't on the table. Like it felt like the thing that held me together, and I had a lot of other problems that needed to be solved that didn't relate to drinking. Like they were not intertwined in my mind, and those things needed to be fixed first before I would even consider like changing any other habits. So I was like, thanks for the information, I'll see you later. And I left that outpatient before they could kick me out. I thought you could still drink if you quit other things, and they informed me that's not accurate. And so I left before they asked me to leave, which is like my pattern for sure. So I ended up graduating college, which is crazy. And I moved back to Raleigh, and that ability to sort of like be a normal looking person immediately left the day I graduated college. I'm not really sure what happened. And the next 2 years are really just like a cycle of a lot of things that can't be talked about in any chronology. I wanted the consequences to stop. I wanted to want to get sober, but I didn't want to get sober. Like I just wanted my life to be different. Because like at this point, everyone close to me like knows what's going on, and everyone wants me to get sober at that point. And so I was always in some mixed variety of like an outpatient, a therapist, a doctor, a medication, going to meetings, like always like doing all these things to try to make the people in my life think that I was doing well. And pretending to be sober when I wasn't sober. And I thought I was really good at it. And looking back, I was really bad at it. Like, it's embarrassing how bad I was at it. But, like, still also, like, wanting things to be different and convincing myself, before I go into this treatment. Like, but not ever, like, actually really wanting it. And so, life got to be really difficult to live because I couldn't show up to work. I couldn't pay bills. I would beg, borrow, and steal from anyone. Like, on my amends list, it was like notable when I didn't owe someone money, because I stole money from everyone I came in contact with. And life just got like really difficult to live. Like, it wasn't just like, you know, fun or whatever anymore. And so I wanted the consequences to stop, but I just couldn't imagine life without a drink, because people would be like, okay, stop drinking and your life will get better. But I would stop drinking for a day or two and like my life gets worse. Like, I can't live with my brain, you know, without some kind of solution, right? And so it was very confusing to me, and it seemed like there wasn't a way out, because not drinking didn't work and drinking wasn't working anymore. And I started like, I went to, you know, a doctor one time to get a medication, someone who helps people specifically like us, and, you know, paid them the money, and they talked to me, and they looked at me and they were like, you're too much of a liability. We can't help you. Like, here's your money back. Please leave. You should go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, and that kind of stuff started happening, you know. There weren't a lot of options. I did go to inpatient treatment one time because I got arrested, and I was like, I should take a small break so people can forget about this. If I'm gone, they'll forget. And, you know, I went with like good intentions, you know, like something's going to be different. And I didn't stay sober while I was in treatment in a controlled environment. That's not a good sign. And, but still, like, they were driving me home, and I'm like, this is it, you know, tomorrow's my day. I'm going to stay sober for the rest of my life. And like, I walked in my house. I didn't even put like my bag down. I grabbed my keys and like I was off to the races. You know, like I just couldn't do it at that time. And, you know, there's a large variety of stories of, you know, driving down the highway the wrong way in a blackout, and, you know, times I almost got killed, and, you know, like those stories all exist. But basically I couldn't stop drinking. I wanted to die because I didn't know there was any other way. And, you know, I would go to AA meetings, and people would be like, you never have to drink again. And that was not attractive to me. People would be like, you're going to die. And I was like, that is attractive, because I was never afraid that something bad was going to happen. I was afraid that I was going to continue to live that way every day for the rest of my life. And that just seemed like I can't do that. And, you know, all my relationships are crazy or gone or frayed or terrible, and, you know, what we do, right? And so what happened was, people were always wonderful to me in AA and other 12-step programs. And at some point, I put together 60 days. And like 6 hours was unheard of for me. So like 60 days was like a lot. And I was going to meetings every day, and I was hanging out with people who were sober. So it was a, you know, it was a big deal after, you know, trying it for a couple years to do that. What I'll say is that I had a sponsor, but I didn't work the steps, and I was actively dishonest because I didn't like some of the suggestions that you guys provided. Namely, like, don't date, things like that. You know, like, take medications as prescribed, you know, things like that. I just didn't, you know, I wasn't interested in that. But I didn't drink, and I went to meetings, okay? So the fellowship was like, it was a huge glimmer of hope for me, but I didn't have like enough of a solution, right? And so at the end of those 60 days, I was just crawling out of my skin. And, you know, physically sober with what I had learned, I'm like, I'll just have one. I'll be back tomorrow. And that's not what happened. I went on a bender, a 6-day bender that was like the worst 6 days of my life. That was only cut short because someone called my parents who were out of town and were like, you should like come get her. She's like really off the rails. And so they did. They came home early from wherever they were and came to my house, and they were like, okay, well, my parents were my keepers, right? Like most good alcoholics have a keeper of some kind. My parents were my keepers at that point, and they were like, well, this house that you live in, you can't live here anymore. Your car you can't have. Your job you're fired from. like everything, right? And they're like, so you can go to treatment or like you can walk away, and like, best of luck to you. And I had to think about that long and hard. And they were like, will you go to treatment for 3 months? And I said, fine. And I called the lady, and she was like, okay, so it's 2 years. And that was shocking. But for whatever reason, like, I was like backed into a corner, and she said, are you willing to do anything? And I said, sure. I wasn't, but I said I was, because that's, you know, like, it just came out of my mouth. And I woke up the next morning, my parents knocked on my door. I made them pack my stuff because I'm that much of a brat. And they put me in the car, and I woke up in like the middle of nowhere in South Georgia. It was like the worst day of my life still to this day. Waking up and being like, what did I do? You know, like, if I had just known this was going to happen, like, of course, you know, like I thought that, but it wasn't like, oh, we do acupuncture and have equine therapy. Like, it was basically just like a big boot camp. I was completely off the grid, and all I did was go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, I had been exposed to, you know, the steps and all of that, but like, you know, I didn't hear any of it. You know, like, I wasn't ready to hear it. And for whatever reason, being like physically separated and being confined in this space, I was finally able to like hear some of it. And I remember detoxing, reading the doctor's opinion, and like finally like understanding for the first time, like, oh, I'm an alcoholic, like, and what that actually means, and that in and of myself, I will never be able to stay away from the first drink. I think I had always known that like once I start, I can't stop. You know, like, I'm always thinking about the next drink, not the one that's in my hand, but I couldn't understand why I couldn't stay stopped. And reading the doctor's opinion and about like the alcoholic cycle and restless, irritable, and discontent, I was like, oh my God, I've been waiting for someone to explain this to me forever, you know? And I surrendered a little bit at that point. And I was extremely displeased with my living situation, I will say. I just like oozed despair from every pore. I was not happy. I just like to always tell people that if you're new and you're miserable, like, that's fine. You don't have to like it here. I was the worst. Just like so negative. But I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps. And, you know, when I would come before and people would talk about God, or I would like read the steps, I just like didn't really care. Like, I was like, this doesn't have anything to do with anything. And I think when I like woke up and got sober this last time, I finally believed that the women that I was around were actually just like me. Up until that point, like, I'd come to meetings and I'd see someone pick up like 60 days, and I'd be like, nah, like, either you're lying or you're not like me. You know, you don't feel like me. Otherwise, there's no way you could do that. And I think this time I finally believed that the women I was surrounded with were alcoholics of my variety, and they weren't drinking, and they seemed happy about it. And I knew that I had tried long enough to do that on my own, and it wasn't possible. So I figured out that, like, okay, they have a power greater than themselves that's helping them. Like, it was just like that simple for me. You know, like the book says, like, let's look at the record. And like, y'all were the record for me. And so those kind of like early experiences were enough that when I got a sponsor and started working the steps, like, it was like 1, 2, and 3 were palatable, you know. And she would tell me to do something, and I would complain, and I would do it. And, you know, the obsession to drink was removed quickly, which to me is like still incredible to this day. I can't believe it happened like that. The obsession with self, not so much, you know. Like I said, I was like not happy to be here. Like, I would call my first sponsor to complain every day, and she would just say, pain is necessary, misery is optional, go help somebody, and then she'd hang up on me pretty much. And so I learned like early on that the best way to not think about me is to think about you guys in some way. And I'm so grateful for that, because you know, it got me through those like early days, and still works today, you know, like, imagine that. And, you know, what happened was, like, I lost the obsession to drink, and, you know, I eventually graduated from that program. And, you know, it took until about, like, 2 years for me to, like, kind of actually, like, fall in love with AA. You know, like, at 2 years, I didn't have all my stuff back, and I was really angry. And I was really resentful all of a sudden, and, I knew that drinking wasn't going to make it any better. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do now? And the women that I had formed relationships with would just like come to my house and be like, hey, like get in the car, we're going to a meeting and we're going to go to dinner. And they just like drug me along, and people were like, here's a service position. And I think that was like at the point that I finally sort of surrendered, that like you guys might know something that I don't know, and that I don't have to fight against reality, because I have been doing that my whole life. Just unwillingness to accept life as it was presented to me. Like I said, dissatisfied from, you know, day one. And no wonder I had to pour liquor down my throat all those years, you know, like I just couldn't live like with the world the way that it is. And you guys showed me that like I needed to. And women, like I said, just like drugged me along, and I just kind of fell in love with AA at that point. And got on board, and got less miserable, which was nice for a change. And I went back to school. I didn't have anything else to do at the time, so I went back to school, which was great. We started a meeting on campus. There was like a gaggle of sober people on this campus, and we started a meeting, and you know, that was fun. And finished school. Like, school's not very hard if you just treat it like AA, sit in the front, like don't get up and walk around, pay attention, ask for help. So that was cool. And you know, I wanted to move back home, and at the time that was like the scariest thing ever. I got sober with a lot of people who moved there for that purpose, right? And so I watched one person after the other go home to where they were from and not keep going to AA and drink again, and most of them died. I watched it just one after the other, and so I was terrified to move back to Raleigh, and kind of return to the scene of the crime, because I really was like off the grid up until that point. Like, people didn't know where I was really, and people would say like God and AA are there too, you know. And I moved back home and was back with my family, which was amazing to get to start to like really rebuild those relationships, because I had been cut off from them kind of by design. Like, they needed a break from like my chaos, you know. And I got to go back and be more present in their lives. And I started to go to meetings, and I'd kind of like sit in the back and like, hey, I'm okay. It's, you know, it's hard to move in sobriety. It was for me. I'm pretty introverted, and I found my home group, and I found all these women who are really wonderful. And like when I walked in here, you know, like people introducing themselves, you know, like inviting me out to dinner, like, you know, like really brought me in. And I joined that group, and I've been there ever since. And I always just like to make a plug that like, if you don't have a home group that you love, like go get one. It had never been that important to me up until that point of my sobriety, and now it's so important, I think, to have a home group that you're really that you participate in actively, and a group that participates actively in the AA community in your area. It's helped me so much to be there every time the doors are open, if I can be there. And you know, life got really good. You know, I've had different sponsors who have shown me different ways to do things. I've had the opportunity to sponsor women, and there really is nothing like being able to sit across from another person and share your experience, and that be all you have to do. And over time, watching like the light come on in their eyes, or someone who comes into your, you know, your home group and sits down and stay and watch their life change. Like, where do you get that? You know, like, it's really magic. Like, I believe it works. I know it does, but every time I see it happen, it still just like floors me that it happens still, you know, because it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but you know, I get to watch it all the time. And I've had the opportunity to work in different service capacities, whether that's at the group or district or like committees. And I love that there's a place for everyone in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, whatever your spiritual gifts are. we have a place for it. And that's been really cool. I started a career, which is crazy. I was not employable, as I previously mentioned, and I am today. I got married to another person in Alcoholics Anonymous, to another person. And, we have a really, wonderful life. And I think it still amazes me, he used to sleep on the floor of a homeless shelter, and, I just told you about my life, and, we wake up every day and we're both sober. It's, statistically incorrect. And, it's only a result of, us actively participating in AA. And, most recently we decided we wanted to have kids, and went through infertility, and then we did IVF, and that was one of the first times where I could really identify the idea of I really might not get what I want this time, and being okay with it. I always have some problem I can complain about, don't get me wrong, but deep in my core, I knew that even if I never had any kids, I was going to be fine, because I have a higher power and I have AA. And that was what this program has given me, is just the ability to be okay in any circumstance. And that was a really cool experience to go through, of there being a lot of uncertainty and a lot of emotion, but also being able to be it's going to be okay no matter what the outcome is. And that's just an example, because that's the most recent thing that happened, right? But we did end up having a kid, and he was born on my 11th sobriety anniversary or whatever. And I did not enjoy being pregnant. I did not enjoy having a child, that delivery part of it. But what was crazy to me was that, and people were trying to be nice, so don't take this the wrong way, but I was miserable looking, and I was huge, and people would come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here." And I was yeah, why wouldn't I be at in AA? And then the week after having him, I went to my home group, and people were like, "I can't believe you're here." And I was I didn't know you just got to stop coming here when you're pregnant and have kids. People must make me feel bad about it. And, and I have so much support. I'm so lucky that I can be here tonight, that I can still actively participate in AA, because it does change things, right? But the point I'm trying to make is I never considered well, I just don't have time to go to AA anymore, because this is the thing that saved my life and makes my life possible every single day. I love that kid. I went through a lot to have him. He's the best. But I know that I'm returned to sanity as of, this moment, because of, my participation in spiritual matters. But if I stop coming here, that goes out the window. And I love that kid so much, but I know what kind of alcoholic I am. And I would put him in the car and drive drunk with him in the car. I would leave him alone in his crib to go get a bottle of liquor. I just know what kind of alcoholic I am. I do. I know that no matter how much I love him, that without spiritual help and without me actively participating here, it wouldn't be enough. And I'm so grateful that I never considered just not coming here anymore. And I'm not saying that couldn't happen. I have a lifetime to go, right? And it's not a judgment, but it's just something I've been thinking about a lot. Just because people would say that to me, and I just thought it was really funny that people would be like, "I can't believe you're here." Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Okay. But, I don't know what else to say except for what I've already said, that, Alcoholics Anonymous is the best thing that ever happened to me. If you're new and this doesn't make any sense, that's fine. It doesn't need to. It didn't to me, and sometimes it doesn't still to this day. But what makes go around is the love that we have for each other. And, in this room, I can love every single person as just another alcoholic. And I think what I was looking for in a drink was just to feel okay in the world, and to feel like I could interact with other people around me. And, you know, alcohol let me do that for a while until it stopped working like I needed it to. And through the process of working the steps, like, I can exist in the world and I can interact with you guys, and be okay. And life is not, every day isn't just another day to be endured anymore. I can actively participate in life and look forward to things and have interest and just all of these things that, like, I didn't come here for. Like, I didn't come here to form a relationship with a higher power or to, like, make friends with women or, you know, like, I didn't come here for any of that. Like I said, I came here because I thought maybe I could stop drinking and that I wouldn't ever be happy about it, but maybe I would stop drinking. And I got everything I never knew I wanted. If 24-year-old me met me, I'm like my worst nightmare, you know, of the person I walked in here, you know, as. And I think I just became the person that I'm becoming the person every day that I've always was meant to be, you know. And it's such a good reminder of, like, I have no idea what's good for me ever. And you guys helped me as, like, God with skin on to, like, guide me through life and show me a different way. And it's just so beautiful. And I'm just beyond grateful to be an alcoholic because I get to have this experience. And I appreciate you guys having me again. I always like to end a little bit early because no one gets mad about that. You're welcome. And thank you again for having me.